Wait. Before you scroll past, just listen. A little girl in torn shoes and a threadbare sweater didn't ask for money from a millionaire. She asked for something else, something so powerful it stopped the man cold. What was it? You're about to find out. And when you do, your heart won't be the same. The soft drizzle that afternoon had turned the city gray, as though even the sky had run out of color. People bustled through the streets in their trench coats and umbrellas, avoiding puddles like they were traps and not just shallow mirrors of the world above. But near the old park bench on Willow Lane, life slowed down. And if anyone had looked past their screens, their meetings, or their Monday mood, they might have noticed a little girl sitting alone. She had two things with her: a soggy cardboard sign and eyes that looked too tired for someone so small. Her name was Amara. She was only 7, but the weight of the world had already perched itself on her thin shoulders. Her tiny fingers clutched a plastic cup with a few cold coins clinking inside. Yet it wasn't the money she watched. She watched people. She watched fathers hold their daughters' hands. She watched mothers fix tiny hats on their babies. She watched children skip beside their parents, full of life. And Amara sat still, as if moving might break her fragile hold on hope. Across the city, in a blacked-out luxury car, a man named Dominic Gray stared at his phone. He wasn't looking at the market crash or stock reports. Not today. Today, it was a picture of his daughter, Lila, on his lock screen that held his attention. She'd sent him a selfie from the kitchen this morning, flour on her nose, grinning as she tried baking muffins for the first time. "Miss you, Daddy," her message read. He hadn't replied. Dominic was one of the youngest self-made billionaires in the country. The kind of man people wrote articles about, how he rose from nothing, built an empire, and never stopped. But somewhere between ambition and boardrooms, he had begun losing something precious: presence. After his wife passed away 2 years ago, he buried himself in work to avoid the crushing silence at home. His daughter Lila was all he had left, and even she was starting to slip through his fingers. Today, fate wasn't just knocking, it was calling out in a tiny voice. Dominic had a meeting cancelled last minute. His driver was looping through downtown when the car stopped near the red light at Willow Lane. That's when Dominic saw her. A little girl sitting on a bench with nothing but damp clothes, a faded backpack, and a cardboard sign that read, "I don't want money. Just need a warm hug." He stared, blinked, then scoffed. "What kind of trick is this?" he muttered. But his heart, it beat a little faster. Something about her didn't look staged. He told his driver to circle back. Curiosity had always been Dominic's strength. It had built his fortune. But this was different. This was a pull in his chest. A whisper that maybe, just maybe, something important was happening. He stepped out of the car with his tailored suit and $2,000 shoes. And as he approached, the little girl looked up at him, not afraid, not demanding, just tired. Quietly brave. "You shouldn't be out here," he said gently. "Where's your family?" She looked at his eyes, not his suit. "Gone," she whispered. "Mom went to the hospital and never came back. I think God took her. And Dad, he left before that." Dominic froze. "And you're here alone?" She nodded. "I live in the old shelter, but they kick us out during the day. I come here 'cause it's not too noisy." Dominic felt a strange heat in his chest. He reached into his wallet automatically, pulling out a $100 bill. "Here, this can help you get food." But the little girl didn't move. "I don't need money," she said, her voice breaking gently like a dry twig. "I just need a hug, like your daughter gets." Dominic's hand stopped in midair. The bill fluttered in the breeze. And suddenly, all the noise in his mind, the deals, the meetings, the weight of an empire, fell silent. "Like my daughter," he repeated, unsure how she knew. "I saw you last week," she said. "You were here, holding her hand. You picked her up and spun her around. She laughed so much. You gave her a hug before you left. It looked warm, like it could fix a broken heart." Dominic swallowed hard. For a moment, the two just stared at each other. A millionaire and a child with empty pockets, but the biggest need of all. Then, slowly, like someone remembering how to breathe, Dominic knelt down. And without saying anything, he opened his arms. Amara didn't run into them, she walked carefully, like this was a dream she didn't want to wake up from. And when she reached him, she wrapped her arms around his neck, quietly burying her face into his shoulder. He felt her body tremble. He felt the hunger of her spirit. He felt something he hadn't in a long, long time: humanity. Dominic held her, Not just with his arms, but with his entire being. And time didn't matter. People passed. No one noticed. But in that small corner of the world, a heart was mended, not with riches, not with charity, but with something rarer, real connection. "Thank you," she whispered. "I haven't had one since Mom. I forgot what it felt like." Dominic couldn't speak. When they finally parted, she smiled. "Your daughter is really lucky." "She is," he whispered back, eyes wet. "But I think I'm luckier." They talked more that afternoon. Dominic cancelled his next 2 meetings. He bought her a meal, sat with her, asked about her life. She was smart, bright even. She wanted to be a nurse, so people don't feel alone when they hurt. That line alone made him grip the table. And when it was time to drop her back at the shelter, she hugged him again, this time not as a stranger, but as someone who had filled a hole inside her she never talked about. That night, Dominic didn't check his stocks. He didn't read emails. He sat on his daughter's bed, hugging her tightly while she giggled and said, "Dad, you're squeezing me." He just smiled. "Sorry, kiddo, just catching up." But Amara's words wouldn't leave him. "I don't need money, just a hug like your daughter." The next morning, Dominic made a decision that would ripple across his entire empire. One hug had changed him. But he had no idea that the next chapter would change everything. The next morning, Dominic couldn't get her face out of his head. Amara, a name as gentle as the little voice that broke through the steel walls of his world. He had spent years building skyscrapers, closing billion-dollar deals, and sitting in boardrooms full of power, but he'd never felt powerless the way he did yesterday when a child asked for a hug instead of help. And now, lying in his king-sized bed under 1,000 thread-count sheets, his chest felt hollow. Lila had noticed too. At breakfast, she leaned over her cereal and said, "Daddy, you look like you forgot to sleep, are you okay?" He didn't know how to answer. Because truth was, something inside him had awakened, and that something wouldn't let him go back to being the man he was. He cancelled his morning meetings, something he almost never did. Instead, he had his assistant find out more about the shelter where Amara said she stayed. "Willow Haven Shelter," she replied. "It's overbooked, underfunded, barely meets safety standards." Dominic frowned. "How many kids are there?" She paused. "Too many." That was all he needed to hear. He didn't waste time. He went there. The building was falling apart, peeling paint, leaky roofs, broken swing sets out front. It wasn't fit to house a memory, let alone children. Dominic stepped through the squeaky doors, and for the first time in years, he walked into a room not as a CEO, but as a father. Inside, he saw kids playing with torn dolls, boys sharing one comic book, and staff stretched thin trying to be parents, teachers, and protectors all at once. And then, he saw her. Amara was helping a smaller boy button his coat, gently scolding him, "You'll catch cold again if you don't close this." She looked up and saw Dominic, and her entire face lit up, not because he was rich or important, but because he came back. And that's what mattered most to a child who'd watched people leave her all her life. "You remembered me," she beamed. He knelt, smiling. "I couldn't forget you if I tried." That day turned into more. He stayed again, talking to other kids. Listening. He learned Amara hadn't always been in the shelter. She used to have a tiny apartment with her mom who worked 2 jobs as a cleaner and a cafeteria worker. But when her mom got sick, there was no insurance. No help. By the time Amara was 6, she was alone. The system tried, but no one came for her. She ended up in Willow Haven like thousands of others, forgotten by the world. Dominic couldn't forget her, nor the others. And that night, as he sat with Lila, he told her the truth. "Honey, there are kids in this city who don't get goodnight hugs. Who don't have warm food or safe homes. I met one yesterday. Her name is Amara. She reminded me of what matters." Lila didn't hesitate. "Can we help her?" That one sentence from his daughter changed everything. By the end of the week, Dominic had spoken to the city council. He announced the founding of the Amara Hope Foundation, pledging $10 million to build better shelters, provide counseling, tutoring, and even job training for mothers in crisis. But more than that, he made a promise. No child should ever have to beg for a hug. Not in his city. News broke quickly. Headlines exploded. Millionaire CEO builds shelter after child's hug request. But Dominic didn't care for the attention. He cared for one thing, Amara. He had her enrolled in a private school, set up a guardian program for her, and even arranged weekly dinners at his home. But something unexpected happened. She never acted impressed by the money, the mansion, or the luxury. She just wanted his time. One evening, Amara was at Dominic's house, sitting on the floor with Lila as they played a board game. Lila had laughed so hard she cried, and Amara looked up at Dominic and said something that made him freeze. "I wish I had a sister like her," Dominic's smile faltered. And then, quietly, Amara added, "Sometimes I pretend I do. At night, I imagine I'm in a real family. I know it's silly." Dominic's throat tightened. "That's not silly," he said gently. "That's hope." But deep down, something bothered him. The shelter had no records of her father. There were whispers he'd vanished, abandoned the family. But Dominic felt something wasn't right. He hired a private investigator, not to dig dirt, but to find out the truth. It took weeks, but what they uncovered shattered everything. Amara's father hadn't left by choice. He had gone to find better work in another city when her mother got sick. He had been sending money, but it never reached them. When he returned after months, he was told the mother had died and the child was taken by the state. His name was Raymond Hale. And for the last year, he'd been searching for her, staying in shelters himself, working odd jobs, filing reports that no one answered. When Dominic got this information, he sat stunned. A man had been out there, heartbroken, searching for the same little girl who touched his soul. And now, they could find each other. Dominic arranged the meeting carefully. He didn't tell Amara right away. Just invited her to the park, the same bench, the same place they met. She showed up in a pretty dress Lila had given her, holding a flower she picked along the way. Dominic was waiting. Beside him stood a man, worn from life, eyes full of fear and hope. Amara looked at him, confused at first. Then her eyes widened, her knees wobbled. "Daddy," she whispered. The man didn't speak. He dropped to his knees and opened his arms. She ran, and she didn't stop until she collapsed into him. The world disappeared. All the pain, the cold nights, the hunger, the questions, gone. Just a father, weeping into his daughter's hair, saying, "I'm so sorry. I tried. I never stopped looking. I love you." Dominic turned away, tears in his eyes. Even his heart, built like a fortress, couldn't bear the beauty of that moment. Weeks later, Dominic helped secure permanent housing for Raymond and Amara. He gave him a stable job and watched as the two slowly built their life again. But Amara never forgot Dominic. Every Sunday, she visited with Lila, and they'd make cookies, tell stories, laugh like they'd all known each other forever. On one such Sunday, Amara leaned against Dominic's shoulder as he read them a story. She looked up and said, "You know, I asked for a hug, but I think I got a dad too." Dominic chuckled softly, his arm around both girls. "And I got a whole heart again. The end. Belle, if this story moved you, touched your soul, or reminded you of what really matters, then please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who might need a reminder that love isn't bought. It's given, and sometimes, it starts with a single hug.